Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have in front of you the accused. Oh, sorry, wrong setting. So, there's a heck of a lot that's going on, upcoming, and being announced recently. There is still consultations running. So we've invited our esteemed guests here to give you their overview of their opinions of how important it is to you, how it affects you, and how you should be involved in the consultations and help them to understand what it is that concerns you. So one at a time, I will hand the microphones across, and if you could all introduce yourselves, please, and with a brief introduction, and then we'll open it up for generic questions and answers, because this is your time to ask questions, okay? So, starting with Jim.
Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm James Button, or Jim Button. I'm a solicitor by profession. Amongst other things, I'm the author of a textbook on taxi law, imaginatively called Button on Taxis, and I'm also the president of the Institute of Licensing.
I'm Lee Beach. I'm a policy officer for Welsh Government. In Wales, we are looking at the new taxi and private hire vehicles bill, and in the short term, also re-looking at guidance.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Smith. I'm here today on behalf of the Institute of Licensing. I'm the chap who writes about licensing stuff in PHTM every month. I'm also by day and night a licensing manager in Guildford Borough Council in Surrey.
I'm Paul Elliott. I work for the Department of Transport on taxi and PHP policy.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Packnell. I work for DEFRA. I'm in the Joint Air Quality Unit, so we're responsible for clean air zones.
Hello, I'm Patrick Quinton. I'm the taxi officer at Avon and Somerset Police. Outside of London, we have a whole team. There's only 2 taxi cops in the country, myself and Greg in Birmingham, and I've done that for 8 years. So I spent my whole working life dealing with taxis.
Thank you very much. So the reason that I've invited you all along is because of the excellent work that you do to support the industry within your roles. So Paul from the Department for Transport and of course the team who are in the audience, they've listened very, very carefully, and they try to express the urgency and the importance of you responding to consultations so that they can take a balanced view in order to write the policies that then affect taxi hire licensing. Patrick, we post very often his videos. You will see them on the PHTM Facebook group, and he's very supportive of the trade. And because of the work that he does, he takes a balanced view between licensing and you guys as badge holders, including enforcing illegal parking on ranks, illegal playing for hire, electric scooters, everything like that. Okay. And he's openly very disappointed when he does have to take action against badge holders because he finds that disappointing. But I think you'd agree that invariably it seems to be more the other way around. Okay. So it's very important that we have that recognition and we appreciate how working together in partnership is important. An awful lot coming up, including driver shortages, licensing delays, minimum licensing standards, which is why Liz is here, the introduction of clean air zones, levelling up, which is going to be another consultation, which we're still waiting for from the department. Is there any indication of how long it's going to be?
We have to get further sector on that.
Okay, excellent. Tinted windows, we've written articles on that. There has been various councils that have amended their policies. It is referred to within the new best practice guidance of the Department of Transport. That is something that's affected many of you because of the lack of availability of vehicles that do not have clear windows. Cross-border hiring, that's something that's always been an issue since 2013, 2014, when it started moving its ahead. Jim and Paul and Mike will be able to give you a more balanced view on that and their views on it. And bus lanes, whether hackneys should be allowed to use them, whether private hire vehicles should be allowed to use them. There's a heck of a lot coming through. So, do you have any direct questions that you would like to ask the panel right now? Please raise your hand. At the back.
Hi, good afternoon. We've heard about Uber, the disruption they've caused for many, many years. If you look at Tesla now, the introduction of the robo-taxi, which they've got planned, I watched another guy online as well called Tony Seba. He talks about the revolution which is going to be with electric cars in the next 10 years and the way that the cost is going to drop. Is our industry going to be decimated, and will it be licensed in 10 years' time? Because will we need drivers?
Okay, any takers? Mike?
Yeah, thank you. Really good question. So AI is going to affect everybody, I think, at some point. I wrote an article in PHTM either in sort of February, March time, I think, about this AI, autonomous vehicles and the licensing legislation. So the way in which the licensing act works is that PHV licensing is required where a vehicle and a driver are provided. So if you have strictly speaking, autonomous vehicle that's not been driven by a driver, then no license is required because the driver and the vehicle aren't provided. It's just a vehicle. And I think in terms of your wider question about the impact on the trade, so whilst it may not be licensed, the autonomous vehicles bill going through Parliament at the moment does have a number of caveats in it whereby providers of autonomous vehicle services are required to consult, are required to make an application to a national body for registration. That national body then needs to consult with local licensing authorities in the area about the application. There's no guidance as yet as to what that consultation will entail. However, it may be that local authorities may have some say in this determination of that application being denied. But in terms of licensing, strictly speaking, there will be a national body regulating autonomous vehicles. It won't be licensed at local level. However, some local authorities may have some say in it. In terms of the sort of wider question as to whether that's going to decimate the need for drivers, I think there's personal preferences is going to be a huge thing. That there are probably many people in this room who want to get into a self-driving car, and others who may want to. I think there's still probably going to be likely a demand for services where a driver and the vehicle provides clearly in a number of cases. The driver provides a much wider service than simply carrying a passenger from A to B. So I think there's also potentially going to be a need for a driver and a vehicle in some form. Thank you.
Okay. One of the other questions that would be brought about response to that would be, how would the end user benefit from AI, autonomous vehicles? Would they have that assistance with luggage that is a license requirement? Well, clearly not, if it's not going to be a licensed vehicle. Jim, have you got any views on that?
Yeah, if you've got an autonomous vehicle and this box on wheels turns up, and you're able-bodied and you haven't got any luggage, you can get into it if you're mad enough, and it, I suppose, will take you to where you want to go, supposedly safely. Forgive me for being cynical about this. But if you've got luggage, if you are less than able-bodied or disabled, you need help. You may not know the town or the city you're in. And yes, the thing might have a postcode for the hotel that you're hoping to get to. But we all know that sat-navs occasionally take you in peculiar places. There's nobody to ask. There's nobody to say, hold on a minute, this appears to be a field. It doesn't appear to be a Premier Inn. What's going on? Whereas if you've got a driver, they can help you. They can say, well, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Hold on, let's sort this out. But I think more importantly is the lack of assistance. Lack of assistance to people who need assistance. Lack of assistance to somebody who didn't need assistance to begin with, but perhaps was taken ill on the journey. Now, if you, as a driver, and you've got a passenger who suddenly goes, oh my Lord, I feel awful, and then passes out, you're going to help them. Naturally, it's human. The box isn't. It's just going to get you to where you are, and then I suppose start to bleep at you because you can't get out, because you passed out. So I personally think there are an awful lot of issues. And I have to agree with Mike. I think an awful lot of the public will want to have you guys driving them, helping them, interacting with them. And that's how I see the future, I'll be honest, for this industry in the light of autonomous vehicles.
Thank you. Patrick?
And following on from that, one of the great bits about my job is I get cylinder crime reports that come in for the force, and it enables me to find drivers that have done a particularly good job. Those that have safeguarded children, safeguarded women at risk of sexual assaults and domestic violence. I see that regularly. If you haven't got the driver to do that, who's going to supply that support? When we're looking at county lines, when we're looking at child sexual exploitation, and most of you have done safeguarding courses, so you know the sort of things we're looking at. That simply doesn't work with an autonomous vehicle.
Very good point, thank you. Any other questions on the audience?
Just going back to the police officer. Well, two questions actually. On Monday, we had a driver. He was parked next to a lady. He got a livery on the side of his vehicle, and unfortunately, the lady walked away from the vehicle and she got raped. The police came to us because the CCTV couldn't pick the registration number up. Now, I know there's a lot of authorities wanting no liveries on vehicles. The only way they could trace it was the livery on the side of the vehicle. So they've interviewed the driver. Fortunately, the case has leapfrogged. That was one question. And to you as a police officer, we touched on the Uber working for a lot of authorities. How do you feel if you go into a vehicle, you see the driver got an Uber app, a Bolt app, an MI Taxis app, a Take Me app, a Free Now app? Do you think that's safe to drive?
You're referring to multi-apping there?
Multi-apping, yeah. But also he's got 5 phones on his dash. You're not supposed to use your mobile phone whilst driving. But a lot of authorities are allowing this to happen. And I personally don't agree with it.
So you're right, it is a safety concern, clearly. In terms of the mobile phone use, it's obviously illegal to use it handheld when driving, and not necessarily when it's in the cradle. But you're absolutely right, because the risk of being distracted is that much higher. In terms of the police action, we need to evidence that that level of distraction has caused whatever the incident or the accident is in the first place. So one of the things we do when returning to an accident is have a look at what's on the screens, where are they positioned, that sort of thing. You are right, it is a real concern. But it's not just about distraction within the vehicle, it's about other factors as well, such as driver tiredness. If the driver's having to work 10, 12 hours a day, that's going to have an effect as well. So you're right to be concerned about having a number of devices on the screen. And I've seen some terrible ones where there's been iPads in the windscreen where they're dealing with it. They are offences and I deal with them when I come across them. And I think I might have missed the first question though, relating to the signage.
Yeah, well, a lot of authorities now are taking the view that they don't want signage on vehicles. Well, unfortunately, for this young lady that's been raped, the only way the police knew where she was and who she'd been talking to was because there was signage on one of my vehicles. I couldn't zoom in and see the registration number, but could see it was an MI taxi. So they phoned us, and they got the information from the driver, he could give a report. And I believe that the signage should be on vehicles. Where we live, they turn the lights off at 12 o'clock at night on not the main roads, but the side roads. So if you've got a daughter or young families looking for a taxi or yourself or a private hire, surely you're on the end of the road, unless you get a text message. You'll also get the vehicle turn on the signage. That's my take on it.
So this makes me a slight caveat, because this is my views as being a taxi officer for 8 years, not necessarily the views of the Somerset Police. Is I think clear signage is vital, but I think it goes beyond that as well, because a private hire vehicle in my area will look very different from your area, will look very different from Leeds or York. for me, one of the keys to getting this right is to make sure that the public in general recognise what is a private hire vehicle, what should it look like. And when you've got such a variety of approaches, whether that be the TFL, which I call stealth plates, because from the back you can hardly see the little things in the window, through to some of the other councils absolutely plaster their vehicles in signs and graphics. I think that it's not so much about what should it look like, but making sure everybody does the same, so that people recognise what is a safe vehicle to get in.
Well, I agree, but if you're at a nightclub or a wedding and there's 20 vehicles outside, if you've booked an MI and Charlie Farley's booked a direct, surely when you come out, you're not going to give us a customer without 20 vehicles. So there's an MI, there's a direct, there's a take mate, you've all got your vehicle, having got Mr. Smith. So I agree that should have signage on, but I still would like to see the company sign. So if I've booked an MI taxi, I walk up to the MI taxi.
So I'm going to pass this over to Jim and then to Paul. Jim's got a response to make, and then Paul, I'm going to ask you to give your view from the DLT best practice view on the side.
Abdul's got a question.
In relation to signage, the best practice guidance published in November recommends minimal signage on private hire vehicles to differentiate them from hackney carriages. Paul will elaborate on that. That is only guidance. Local authorities can depart from it with good reasons to do so. My view is that signage is important on private hire for the reasons you've outlined. But interestingly, the view that the trade bodies put to the Institute is that signage on private hire vehicles encourages unlawful plying for hire. So you've got two sides of the argument. In relation to the multi-apping, a local authority cannot specify that a driver can only work for one private hire operator. The local authority is determining whether Bert Bloggs or Frida Smith is a fit and proper person to be a private hire or hackney carriage driver. That's the end of their involvement. Multi-apping is down to the operators. You contract with your drivers in whatever way you contract with them. And you can say, you're only going to work for me. That's an operator's issue. It's not a local authority's issue. I fully agree with Patrick about the distraction of having lots of devices, but it's not down to the local authority.
So the best practice guidance does say minimal signage on private hire vehicles to try and help the public better differentiate between taxis and private hire vehicles. One of the other recommendations is that all taxis should have roof signs, taxi on them, and private hire vehicles should not have any roof lights on them at all. On the displaying the operator signage on the vehicle, best practice guidance says that should be required as a licensing condition, but that if there's if the driver, the writer, and the operator wants to have that signage on there, then that's okay. But it shouldn't be the licensing authority effectively dictating, as Jim said, that that driver and that vehicle can only be used. So that vehicle can only be used for bookings through that operator.
Okay, Lee, what's your views from the Welsh Government white paper?
Yeah, don't disagree with anything that Jim and Paul has said on that. We did consult on multi-apping as well. It is a concern, it's a growing concern where drivers do multi-app on occasions. It can lead, in our opinion, to an increase in cancellations as well, leaving passengers stranded where they can instantly cancel a job, even on routes, because they've seen a different job on another app, on another phone, possibly. We did consult on it, and it was very complex, and a lot of the industry blame each other, to be honest with you. There is another benefit, though, in technology that we haven't covered, and that's that a lot of companies can obviously communicate with the passenger to tell them which vehicle, which driver is en route, etc. and that's a really good use of kind of notification about which vehicle driver is coming, and that can also be used if something like that terribly does happen, to identify the vehicle driver.
Thank you. Mark's got a question, and I'm going to bring Lindsay in to discuss that we know.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm working from Oldham, and my typical problem is that outside vehicles, which is 1,000 miles away from my hometown, they are working, and also the boat is coming along, the Uber is coming along, and they are parking wherever they like it, and also they park parallel to our ranks, and also the parking where the venue is. So obviously, is anybody over here, including the police, can they put them to the right place, or they tell them where to go? Because they are difficult, if they cause a lot of difficulties for us as hackney drivers, and some sort is a problem because we are the hackney carriage in the white car, and the car coming from outside, they are white too. They are pretending they are the hackney carriage. So obviously, I need seeking help from the panel to sort this problem out. Thank you.
Anybody?
I feel your pain. So much of my job is about sorting out parking problems in the city centre. And I see the wider picture because it's not right that hackney drivers can't use their ranks because people are parked on it. But equally, in the city centre environment, it's really difficult for private hire drivers to pick up their customers where they want to be picked up, and then where do you wait afterwards? So it does cause a lot of issues. Parking is generally the responsibility of the council, and I don't know where it is where you are, but certainly where I am, council parking services go home at about 9-10 o'clock, which doesn't help me very much in the early hours when I'm trying to work. So it is a big problem. There's no golden solution to it. That will very much depend on the local area. But you're right, parking is a huge problem and not easily solved. You mentioned about cross-border hiring. From my point of view, it's not as much of an issue as it might be for many of you. Because of my enforcement powers, it doesn't matter where the vehicle comes from. If there's a problem, I deal with it. And of course, with the Safeguarding Act that came in a year ago, that's been or potentially a game changer as well, because it allows the councils to send information between themselves more easily about problems with vehicles in their areas. There's also a lot more joint working going on. So, for example, I regularly work with a number of councils, including Wolverhampton down in Bristol, where we can do those checks. So for cross-border hiring, not as much of an issue in terms of enforcement, although I accept that it causes you problems in terms of working locally.
So I think we're going to come on to the cross-border hiring or working. Two different terminology, of course. Because it is perfectly legal for a private hire operator to dispatch a private hire vehicle driver to fulfill a people's job. It's perfectly legal for that vehicle and driver to do that job. It then becomes an issue if that vehicle is set around in a remote area and is not licensed in that area and receiving funds from an operator. This is also not licensed by the same council as their license plates. But that's a different subject that we're going to come on to later in the next 7 hours. So I don't want to get too deep into that now. I'm going to bring Lindsay in because Lindsay is DEFRA and Clean Air Zones. I know that Glasgow has recently been introduced, Bristol has been introduced for quite some time now. Manchester has been deferred. Are there any more coming on?
Short answer, no.
Okay.
Which isn't to say that there won't be, but there are no plans at the moment. So every local authority that has any exceedances, we're particularly focused in NO2 levels, obviously for public health reasons of keeping everyone as safe and healthy as possible. So any local authority which have got exceedances in that, we work with them. We do appreciate that a clean air zone, a charging clean air zone, has impacts on local businesses like yourselves. So we see that as a last resort if there aren't other measures that can't be taken. So there are other local authorities that are taking other measures, which are sort of getting them to where they need to be with their NO2 levels. But the ones with the worst NO2 problems, where we need to make the really quick reductions, is where we're using these clean air zones and having these sort of charging schemes, which are in 7 cities in the UK. We're not responsible for the Scottish ones, but we have sort of lent them our technology, if you like. So the Scottish government are dealing with that separately as well. I would say that the clean air zones aren't designed to be permanent things. So as soon as we get the NO2 levels down to where they need to be, and where we can demonstrate that once we take those measures away, the levels aren't going to go straight back up again and we'll be back to square one. So we're looking at sort of changing people's behaviour within these areas as well. Then we'll be able to actually stop the scheme and things will go back to as you have.
And how often should the scheme be reviewed? How frequently?
They're effectively reviewed every year. So there are different stages where you're looking at the, actually it starts off quarterly, so you have sort of quarterly levels of the NO2 that are being monitored, and then different sort of scientific stages that it goes through to show that there aren't any exceedances. But again, it's that scientific evidence that says, once we take these measures away, we now believe that the levels aren't going to go back up again. So we're in a safe place to remove the measures.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? At the back? 2 at the back.
It's Keith being Basildon. A couple of issues. Just the previous discussion, the gentleman from the DOT was talking about standards and things, and that Mr. Putt was saying that they are guidance in a lot of areas and therefore they don't have to be applied. The issue in our area is that they are coming from areas with lower standards. They're not doing, we do everything, including with private noise tests and those sorts of things. They've gone from those other areas, and we're almost being forced into dumbing down our standards in our area. Secondly, the lady from DEFRA. So a few years ago, it was an idea to put transport hubs within our area. So they put the buses, taxis, and trains in the same area. We went from having 0 number of cancers, drivers dying from cancer, over a 20, 30 year period from where we were previously parked, to all of a sudden, first couple of years we had 1 driver contact cancer passed away. Within 10 years of us moving into the hubs, we've got buses sitting there with their engines chucking out exhaust fumes. We've got the brakes on the trains over the top of us almost. We had a period of, I think in year 10, we had 7 drivers die from cancer. When we questioned the council, do they have clean air policy? Do they have meters to check the clean air, etc.? They went, well, we do, but they're not in the area. So we couldn't actually formulate a plan or argue that we wanted to be moved because they didn't have the plan.
Okay. When's your first year?
Yeah. Sorry, did you say you were Basildon?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so I can't answer that one directly because I say Transport for London look after the London areas, hence we're not involved in the ULEZ or the other stuff. But in general, oh, sorry, apologies. Yeah. Okay, so there should be, look, like I say, I'm only speaking generally because I obviously don't know the specific situation in your local authority, but the DEFRA advice is that local authorities should have the measuring instruments in the areas that have the biggest problems, and that's what we would always advise. So, yeah, that's kind of probably my only comment on that. I think really there's an argument for sort of pushing back. If there's potentially a health risk and an issue there, then it's something that the local authority should be looking at.
Okay. Your next question was aimed at Department of Transport, Paul.
So we've got 2 documents issued, the statutory standards, which focus on safeguarding, and those I think are high, hopefully robustly applied. I don't think there's anyone who are against any of those. In the best practice guidance, that deals with stuff that's outside the scope of that, and so for things like topographical knowledge tests for private hire vehicle drivers. We consulted on those proposals, we looked at the evidence, and the recommendations we have in there point to the regulator's code, which is that any requirements that are placed on a sector that is being regulated need to be proportionate. So given the reliability of things like sat-navs, is there a reasonable case to argue that a topographical knowledge test should be required for a private hire vehicle driver? The conclusion the government came to is that it shouldn't.
Okay, Lee, and then Mike.
So the question is about standards, varying standards across the country, and I think it's plainly obvious that the only way that you can improve that is if you have national standards. So we consulted on minimum national standards, and we had over 74% of people respond saying that they wanted it. A large minority of the, a large number of the others who responded wanted absolute national standards. So everybody almost wants national standards across the country, and I think that's the position we need to get to is our view. It's very difficult to do it through guidance. Ultimately, I think we would need legislation to do that. But that obviously is not a quick fix. It's not something that can be done easily, but it's what we're all building towards.
Okay, Mike, and then Roger.
Yes. So obviously, Lou was speaking on behalf of the Welsh government. So the English government did commit to the introduction of national standards, but that's parliamentary time allows, and that's not happened yet. What I think you will find in your area is that clearly the statutory standards from July 2020 set a very high standard in terms of what is expected in terms of driver awareness, in terms of safeguarding, etc. That all local authorities must have regard to, because that's statutory guidance. What you will find is now that the best practice guidance has been updated, a lot of local authorities will be looking at their policies and saying, well, actually, this is our policy says compare it to the best practice guidance, and this is where you as a member of the trade should have the opportunity to put in your comments as to what your local authority area should be doing based upon what the best practice guidance says. I mean, standard. We shouldn't have a situation where everyone races to the bottom to lower standards just because that's what other people are doing. We are a high risk profession that's set out in the statutory standards, and you are there to provide a good service to your customers. That comes about by a good standard of sort of knowledge and training. As it shouldn't be a race to the bottom, but unfortunately we do have that case in some areas because of the way they set policies. But as I say, in terms of what you should be doing, I think you'll find if they haven't done so already, they should be looking at their policy as a relevant best practice guidance, and that's when you should look at having your views across as to what you think is relevant to your area. I hope that helps.
Okay, Patrick.
Clearly, I'm a fan of anything which improves public safety, obviously. My concern is, though, that the minimum standards have raised everybody, and some councils will have raised their game to it. But it's when we talk about minimum, because then the half of the issue that we're trying to get everyone to work the same, have the same standards. If you've got minimum, that's not going to happen. It's got to be absolute. And one of the difficult things for me is because I'm enforcing policies and conditions across several councils. First of all, I've got to know about half a dozen sets of standards. But it's very difficult sometimes to explain to drivers why that vehicle, which has got a front and rear plate and a marking in the stream, is somehow less safe or more safe than a vehicle from a neighbouring council, which might only have a rear plate. So it's a very difficult thing to enforce when you've got that variety. Vehicle ages is another example of that. And I'm probably going off topic, but where you've got this situation where a vehicle from one council can then go to the next council over and get licensed for another 3 or 4 years, but then come back and work in the same area, clearly doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay. Jim and Lee, and then we're going to have to wind it up at that, because then Jim's staying on the stage.
What I just urge you to do is when a council considers its policy, it will consult on that. please respond to those consultations. One of the big problems, and I work largely, not exclusively, but largely for the local authorities, is the paucity, the lack of responses. And also, and I'm not meaning to be rude here, the quality of the responses. We don't like this is quite often a response. But why don't you like it? You may not like it. I understand you don't like it. You need to explain to the authority why you don't like it, and if possible, put forward a plausible alternative. Then the authority can consider it. So, as I say, please respond and then think about those responses, consider them. Gary was saying earlier in the session when you were talking about responding to the VAT consultation, if you aren't able to respond or you find it difficult to respond, find somebody who can help you. Club together with your association or your group and actually pay somebody to formulate it for you so that it makes sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, it won't have an impact. And that would be my plea. Thank you.
Just on that point, even if there's no consultation and you're not happy, still make the point to the local authorities who you can with that.
Okay. So one final question from the back, and then we are going to have to wind up because I think we're overrunning on time already. We're going to get into the next session. Back in Conrad.
Hi everybody, my name's Mark Wall, also from the Basildon Borough Terrace Association. We're in a very fortunate position, which a lot of councils have not got, of having a taxi form specifically designed to actually allow us to answer points and issues that previous speaker just said. But not everybody's got the opportunity, and effectively, not every council has association representation. So it's all very well saying, please get them to actually answer and respond. Unless you've got some sort of association backing or something in place, you can actually urge working taxi drivers like themselves to actually do it, then you're never going to get anywhere. Not a question, it's just a statement of facts.
That's okay, yeah, and that's a very well made point. And obviously, it is important to have somebody to speak for you. It's important to have an association and a representative body. If you're struggling to do that, then please feel free to reach out to the PHTA, and we can help you in setting the constitution, and we can give you all the guidance that you need in order to set that up. The Regulators Code 2014 is very, very clear, and as everybody said on the panel now, it is important that you have that importance. The Regulators Code 2014 makes it a duty for the local authority to actively engage with those they regulate and those that represent them. So it isn't just about having that consultation. Many local authorities are now reaching out and saying, okay, we're going to launch this consultation, we're going to make these changes, but we'd like to have a working group first, so that when we do get to the point of consultation, it's easier for your members to understand, it's easier for you to have a response, and it makes a lot more sense. And we've already gone through the things that are quite obviously need changing. So please do have an association. We do have representation, and as Jim said, as Paul said last time with the consultation with the practice guidance, and as we keep saying all over the place in the article that we write, please respond. And a consultation takes place is them asking you for your opinions. We keep saying they don't understand our job. They're asking us to tell us how our job works. So let's tell them. And as Jim said, make it clear, make it understandable, make it approved. Any other questions? Round at the back there.
I'm sorry, it's me again. The police officer, sorry. So, 6 years ago, we finally got a police liaison for taxis. He was so successful in that he cracked major burglary rings, fuel things, nicking and whatever else, because he could put out a message and it would go out over our social media. He was catching loads of people. After 10 months, he got promoted to sergeant, and we've had nobody since.
And we keep saying to him, surely you realise that you're getting all these people that were being nicked, and now you've got no backup from us. And then we go to, a couple of weeks ago, we had a few incidents, 3 people were walking off, running off without payment. Drivers had video film, contacted the police to get in some numbers. How much was that fare? Oh, £11.60. Oh, no, it's not enough money, we're not going to do anything for you. Right? And a week later, those same 3 people end up attacking one of our drivers and stealing his money as well. We go back to them and say, we reported all this, well, and you've done nothing. This is your answer. And now we've got drivers who've been physically harmed. We're now prepared to do something, but it's had to wait for a driver to be harmed. How do we encourage the police in their area to become back like they were, 6, 7 years ago?
It's a little bit of a mystery to me why there aren't more taxi cops, because my role is fully funded by the 2 councils, Bristol and South Gloucestershire, which means the drivers literally pay my wages. And that means that it's not all about giving tickets. About 40% of my work is about support for drivers who have been victims of crime, who have been racially abused, and all the other horrific things that happen to drivers. It doesn't cost the taxpayer, it doesn't cost the police, it comes from the licence fees. So for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And if any council or police force wants to contact me to find out more about how that works and the benefits to it, I'll very happily sing the praises of the scheme, because to some extent it puts you in charge then as well. You are, in a very literal way, paying my wages, you deserve a service. You've mentioned about runners. It's such a big topic that I think I'd get into trouble if I started talking, because I can talk about this for an hour quite happily. I will say one thing though, that the police response to reports of runners historically all across the country has been poor. And part of my role is to challenge my colleagues when I come across that. And the 2 reasons I come across it is, first of all, drivers will WhatsApp me and tell me. And secondly, because I review the crime reports across the force, I can pick up where jobs haven't been dealt with properly. So certainly where I am, we haven't got it right, and we still don't give the best service I think we should, but it is far better than many other places in the country where officers don't understand, for private hire drivers, that money's coming straight out of your pocket. It's not coming out of Uber's pocket, it's not coming out of Visa's pockets, it's coming out of your pocket. And that means that we should treat it differently, for example, from a shop crime. So if you steal £10 of goods from Tesco's aren't going to fall. Steal £10 out of your pocket, and that's £10 that your family is lacking. So there needs to be a little bit of a change about the way that my colleagues see it. And because of the sort of work I do, that means I can influence that in the area where I live. If you want to talk to me afterwards about runners and more about what should happen, very happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Would you say that the majority of your enforcement work seems to be enforcing against customers or even enforcing against drivers? Who would you say is the majority of perpetrators?
So I look at the crime figures across Avon and Somerset every month, and I've been doing that for the last 10 months. Every single month, drivers are 3 times more likely to be victims than perpetrators. Every month, 3 times more likely. Now, when I started as a taxi cop 8 years ago, I probably came into it with a normal sort of police head on, that I'm going to find dodgy cars, I'm going to find dodgy drivers. My experiences have absolutely led me to believe that you are far more likely to be a victim of crime than to be the perpetrator. 3 times.
That's a horrible statistic. But it is fact, and it's something that we're all fully aware of. And we keep echoing the same thing all the time. You, as drivers, are far more vulnerable than the passengers. And I'm going to quote you, Jim, from your March seminar. Does the role of licensing, we all know the role of licensing is to protect the public. Does that stop at the travelling passengers? No, it doesn't. it's the road users, it's pedestrians. Does it stop there? No, it doesn't. You, as drivers, are members of the public, and that role extends to the duty to protect you as well. Am I right, Jim? Thank you. Okay, so one final question I think we've got time for. Anybody? No? In that case, thank you very much, my esteemed panel here, for your valuable input, and thank you all for attending. And those who would like to stick around, the very next session is with Jim Button, so Jim can stay on the stage, because that falls quite nicely with what we've just been discussing, which is national standards and cross-border hiring.